All right, I have to give you all a little introduction to myself. This is the 4th time I've tried to get this lecture recorded. The first time, it was Sunday night, and it was usually they're recorded at the main library because they have the setup. I fell flat on my face and broke my nose. And so I didn't do a lecture the next day. So then the next time I did it at the main library, and John, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. John was sick, so it didn't get recorded. So, okay, I'll do it in November. So in November, I was doing it here, and the night before I came down with terrible bronchitis. So this is the 4th time I've tried to get this lecture recorded. And here I am. John is here. The machine works. And you're all here. So it's great. My name is Nancy Coffey. I grew up in Beverly, but not in Beverly Farms. Beverly Farms was the end of the earth. I lived in North Beverly. And everybody laughs when I tell them the only house my husband and I could afford in this area was in Beverly Farms. And that's because people don't know Beverly Farms had a very big working class community. And that's the community I'm really interested in. So my lectures are about the ordinary people. And so this lecture, so I've done, I can't remember how many, but BevCam has recorded some of them, and I hope to do the others again so that they can all be recorded. I'm writing a book about the history of the year-round community of Beverly Farms and how it was shaped by the Gold Coast. So it's really the Gold Coast years, which are from about the 1840s until the end of the 1950s, when most of what had been summer houses became year-round houses, and the Gold Coast was no longer the Gold Coast. So here I am. I've entitled this one "In the Stable and on the Road." It's about the people who worked with horses, and then the people who worked as chauffeurs or drivers of some other sort. I've learned a little more since the last time I gave it, so I have some other things, and then there are things I wanted to put in and I didn't, but here it is. As most of you may know, Beverly Farms was a village unto itself. Robert Rantoul, who was, as you can read, I haven't gotten there yet. I haven't figured this out yet. Okay. Robert Rantoul was a writer, among other things. He was an apothecary, justice of the peace, overseer of the poor, social reformer, member of the school committee, I didn't know he was a state senator, diarist, and a lyceum lecturer. And he gave lyceum lectures about different parts of Beverly. And the Beverly Farms he describes in this, he's writing in the 1840s, no, I think maybe even the 1830s, was a very isolated section of Beverly, separated from Beverly by what he said, even though it's a hard road, meaning rock, it was blocked by snow in the winter, and so it was really a dead place. And then the railroad came through. In the old days, there was one form of transportation, a stagecoach that passed through once a day on its way to Gloucester and once a day on the way to Boston. And it was a yellow stagecoach, and the stagecoach stop and the center of Beverly Farms was, are you all familiar with the fountain? Yeah. Okay, the fountain is much newer, but there was a house back here, and that is the house that was Perry's General Store. It was sold everything from rum to thread, anything you wanted, that you could get it there. And that was the center of Beverly Farms. The church was next door, and most of the people were along that road. Then the railroad came through. The Eastern Railroad decided to extend. I think the branch came to Beverly in the 1830s. And in the 1840s, they decided to extend to Gloucester and come through Beverly Farms. All of a sudden, all the marginally good farms in Beverly Farms were hot real estate. And the ones, even before the railroad was finished, rich people from Boston and some from Salem were beginning to buy up waterfront lots. And so by the time the railroad comes through, Beverly Farms has changed already. And this was never the same again. So from Bucolic Village, it's now a place where people can escape from this heat of the city. Carriage riding into the country was the favorite activity. But the railroad had caused one problem. This is, sorry, I shouldn't get ahead of the slides. This is one of the oldest houses on the beach, and this is still there in a different iteration. It's had lots of changes to it. And it was the Henry Lee House. And you can see somebody's on their horse in the water. That line is just something in the original slide. Those of you who know West Beach will know, sorry, wrong click. Oh, there. You'll know this as the 1620 Rock, which I understand was painted in the 1950s. This was another early estate at a later period, but it was what Franklin Haven estate was one of the first built on the beach, on the water. And the servants in the Franklin Haven estate in 1880 were not a huge number, but you'll notice all of them were from Ireland. The Irish famine was in process, but people had been coming before that and working on the estates. Local women didn't want to work for somebody else. Those who wanted to be workers went to Lawrence or Lowell. Thomas Donahue was the coachman, single, Irish, age 50. And this is a typical carriage house from the 19th century, and I'm not sure. This might be, I don't know if you know Alan Bigelow's house. I think this might be Alan's, I forget. But that was a very simple carriage house. The grooms probably lived upstairs in it, and it wasn't fancy. But there was one detriment to the happy riding of their carriages through the countryside, and that problem was the railroad took over the street. So what had been West Street, not West Street, Hale Street, suddenly became the railroad line. And do any of you ever take the train? Do you see the two houses or three houses that face the tracks? Yes. They faced Hale Street. The tracks came through, and then they suddenly faced the tracks. That's why. And they therefore became low-rent properties, and they were bought by the Irishmen. Linehan, Brady, and Bresnahan. So if you look at this, you can see this was the road that went right like that. And then it had to be this is from an 1854 map, and this is a hole in the map. But you can see the road going here. That's going straight up the hill where St. Margaret's is. So all of a sudden the carriage road had a very steep hill with a very steep descent on the other side. So this was the Conley brothers' first big job. They were hired by the city to blast out the rock and make a more level road for Hale Street. All that blasted rock made it a mess, but Conley brothers straightened it. You can see how unstraight it is here. So you go up the hill, down the hill, and then on. St. Margaret's Church was built on the area they had blasted out. So that's where St. Margaret's is. That was the top of Miller's Hill. And the road went below it. All right, in 1900, this is the Beverly Farms train station. It's cute. And you can see that they're really more like carts than carriages. But transportation came. These late 19th, turn of the century, summer residents sent their carriages down to be picked up and went home. In 1900, this was the second of the biggest estate on the beach was built by one of the Swifts. It was Edmund Swift. Gustav Swift was his brother. These were the Swift Meat Company's Swifts. And Swift was interested in having carriages ride in the countryside. So he built a beautiful carriage house. And this carriage house had living in it at the time Margaret Taylor, the housekeeper, who must have been the wife of the butler, since the butler's name was also Taylor. Bert Driscoll, a carriage groom. Notice they're all Irish. And Dennis Murray was the coachman. I was hoping Mary might be here tonight. And then Tim Sullivan. Does anybody have any idea what a steelman would be? I tried looking this up and I couldn't find it anywhere. He must have had something to do with horses, but he's not a blacksmith, so I don't know. If anybody ever finds out, tell me. Okay. And a married groom. And this is Dennis Murray, the coachman. I love his posture. And this is his family. And they all lived in that carriage house.
So is that Mary's great-grandfather or great-grandfather? What year, Nancy?
This is probably like 1906.
Oh, okay.
Maybe 1910. But early. Here's the coach leaving. And this is my favorite thing, which I hoped Mary would come and bring. This is Dennis Murray's coaching horn. Now I can't understand how the coachman himself would be blowing the horn, but anyway, I think there's somebody standing on the back, but I guess Murray owned the horn. But it's beautiful. But, this is Henry Frick's Eagle Rock, which was built in 1906, 100 rooms. And Frick I'm glad we have Frick, because the Frick archive has records. So anyway, this was his house, and this is his coachman, James Elmore, and I love him. I want to know more about him. I couldn't look, but this little girl is Helen Frick. And here she is driving, and there's just such affection between those two. But the next one is my favorite. He's taking her dolls for a ride. He looks so serious. And this is Frick's stables. And you all know the stables. Are there folks who live in the stables here? I thought there was somebody who lives there who said she was sure to come, but they didn't make it, I guess. And because the Frick Archive is open and helpful, we have this floor plan. Now, I don't imagine you can read it, but this is the carriage room. This is the first floor. Carriage wash. I can't read all of them. The entrance, harness room, and then I wish this were. These are stalls, and I'm not sure what these are. Maybe storage. Is that what it looks like it says?
Could it be carriages?
No, the carriages were over in this big room. I'm not sure. But this is the second floor. And
so these are rooms for the men, groom's room.
These are all rooms for the grooms. And this was the apartment of the carriage driver and kind of manager of all the grooms. So it was a very elegant place. And James Elmore, these figures sound tiny to us, but they aren't. With inflation, it's a whole lot more money. When I did this, it was a few years ago, and I haven't corrected, but $80 would be 2000s, would be a whole lot more. Yeah, the pay and the board. I don't know if his wife did the cooking, but he was responsible for providing the meals or overseeing the meals for all of the guys who are the grooms. The second coachman was paid $75 a month, and that's a November one, and more grooms. He also, the Teamsters horses must have also lived in that barn. Now, Rockmarge was another great estate, and I just wanted to give you the statistics first. The cost of the house was $46,000, which was a whole lot of money then. But the cost of the barn was $71,000. This guy was William Moore was referred to as Judge Moore. He was never a judge. Judge meant a judge of the deal. He was a multimillionaire, or the equivalent, and he was a judge of horses. And horses mattered more than anything else. So his stable housed 38 thoroughbreds and 27 employees. That's more than Frick's. He eventually spent more than $500,000 on the constantly evolving property. But again, that's not with inflation. This is the house, which no longer stands. But this is the carriage house, which does still stand, and is now, I guess, condominiums. And it's a beautiful place. And here's Judge Moore out. I don't know if he's in there, probably. Let's go. Oh, this is written by his granddaughter. One of my earliest memories of Pride's Crossing and my grandfather was the excitement I felt when he asked me to go with him to the stable. It was a little scary for a small girl to walk down the long aisle with 20 standing stalls on each side, the horses stomping, restless, wanting to go out. Everything was spotlessly clean, a mound of hay next to each stall and a white rope with brass fittings across each stall. There was a groom for every 3 horses. I remember the funny hissing noise they made when they were grooming their charges. So I thought that was a lovely little description. I just found that today. Thomas Powers was groom and coachman to Judge Moore. And if you look at his history, he immigrated from County Tipperary in 1896 to New York at age 14. Worked as a groom and a coachman's apprentice. Smart guy. He was hired in 1900 and moved to Beacon Hill, married in 1903. 1905, he's hired by Swift as a groom and moved to Pride's Crossing. So he's first working for Swift and then gets grabbed by Judge Moore, first as a groom and then as a coachman. So he made out all right. After Moore's death, he worked in Brookline for Quincy Shaw and for Quincy Shaw in Pride's Crossing, then for Freddie Prince with his polo ponies. And then 1929 to 1953, he worked for Bayard Tuckerman at Flying Horse Farm in Hamilton until the fire. 1954 to 1982, retired, living in Boston at the time of his 100th birthday. Wow. So living with horses was a good deal for him. Okay. James Barry was a teamster at Rockmarch. And his, how many of you knew Helen Barry? Nobody. Well, I am old. Helen Barry was older. Her parents were both from Ireland, and her father, James Barry, was a teamster for Rockmarch. And he was able to buy this house, which is at the end of Pickett Court. It's a lovely house. And so there they are. I love this. This says, my father rode his bicycle back and forth, leaving the house a little before 7 and returning for dinner at noon. He used to leave, singing, bye-bye, my honey, you stole my money. Bye-bye, I'm going far away. Or, with a bundle on my shoulder, sure there's no one could be bolder, etc. He liked to have time to pitch horseshoes with some of his friends before the afternoon work began. He got home by 5:30. His work week included Saturday. And on Sunday, he used to have to go over there twice to feed the horses that he used in his work. He called the trio Tom, Dick, and Barry. And so bicycles were very much a means of transportation for a lot of the servants who didn't live on site. A lot of them would ride along the railroad tracks. Many people who lived in Beverly Farms worked in Manchester, and they would go down the tracks. Okay, in 1940, Elio Sears bought Frick Stables. How many of you have ever heard of Elio Sears? Okay. Elio was a piece of work. She was, her father listed as his profession a gentleman of leisure. So it was old money, not Sears and Roebuck. This was merchant and then I'm not sure what. Elio was definitely her own woman. She was a lesbian and an out lesbian before her time, although she didn't confess that till after her mother died. When the Prince of Wales came to Boston before he married Wallis Simpson, Elio was his favorite dance partner. She was a good-looking woman. She dressed very well. She was also what is known as a pedestrianist. She walked places. We'll learn more about that. She also loved horses. And so she bought the stable, and working under Elio in the stable was probably more carefully supervised than working under anybody else could have been. Here she is. She was a great world-class tennis player, real athlete. She swam from one of the Newport beaches to another one, first woman to do it. She hiked through California because a bunch of Harvard men did it, so she had to prove that she could. Here she is in her older age with one of her horses. Elio, this is, you folks know Pedge Powers? Did you know Pedge? Her daughter and son are here. One of her daughters and son are here. Pedge's father, Jimmy Hannon, loved horses, and he worked for Elio. And Elio liked and respected him. And this was his description of the things you had to do as a groom. Feed the horses morning and evening, clean the stalls, put the horses out to pasture, ready the horses for riding, rub them down afterwards, keep the tack and carriages spotless, sweep the stable, arrange decorative straw around the stalls, rake the driveways, ride and lead the horses to myopia without their breaking a sweat. Elio tried to get 128, force 128 to, or the state, to put a tunnel under, or an overpass for 128 so that her horses wouldn't break a sweat on the way to myopia. Pedge talked about going with her dad and walking exercising Elio's horses on the beach, and how she loved doing that. But he was a skilled groom. Here he is. He was able to buy this house on Haskell Street. And he also, as if he didn't have enough time working for Elio, he had his own stable and riding school that was out on Wood Lane, which is now was cut by 128, and he lost the riding school. He lived horses all the time. He would go to the New York Horse Show every year, because he was an expert mane and tail braider. So he would earn extra money, and Pedge said, I can't remember how much he earned, but it was enough to make it worth his while to make the trip to Manhattan and back. So he was very well respected. He also had a sense of humor. She told the story of, there was a fellow who was one of the grooms who was a little crazy, and he thought the FBI was there, or somebody was there spying on him. And so Jimmy got one of the kids' guns and would put it in his pocket and show it to the sky, and the guy. And one day Elio walked over to Jimmy Hannon and said, "I know what you're doing, and I want you to stop." Right, here are the stable work. I'm going. How much did they get paid? So, a teamster for Moore got paid $1,280, and that's yearly wages. But again, if you compare, they were comparable to a master plumber, some of them. So it wasn't bad pay. Now I will be talking a little bit more. This isn't totally chronological, because Elio was riding and doing things up into the 50s. So I've talked mostly about horses. Now we're going to talk about cars. I learned some things this week. Beverly Farms, this is from the local newspaper. June 16th, 1906, Sunday, 2:30 to 3:30. 99 automobiles went through Central Square. Central Square is the intersection of Hale Street and West Street. 67 carriages passed through Central Square. So by 1906, during that hour, there were more cars than carriages. What I learned was Massachusetts established the first speed limit in the United States. And the speed limit was 10 miles an hour in a city or settled area, and 15 miles an hour other places. You could be punished by a $200 fine and end up 10 days in jail. Then they abolished that absolute limit, but used it in legal cases if something happens. Massachusetts also issued the first driver's licenses, but they really weren't driver's licenses. They were just driver identification information. It didn't require any kind of training or test to get them. The only people who were tested were professional drivers, chauffeurs, but the rest, nothing.
Nothing changes.
Wait a minute. Oh, I went backwards, sorry. Massachusetts also issued the first license plates. And I can't remember his first name, but the Higginson, who was the founder of the Boston Symphony, had a summer house, I think in Lincoln or someplace, and he was infuriated by the people who were speeding by his house. So he convinced the state that they had to find some way to identify who those drivers were. So this led to license plates. They were enameled. So there's number 911. All right. We look at those speeds and they don't seem too great to us. But shortly after this, it's my next slide, I guess. So here's 1906, and you can see there's a car and a horse-drawn vehicle behind it. So it's still back and forth. Oh, sorry. Beverly Farms had its first fatality in September of 1908, and it was a 7-year-old schoolboy. The farm school was quite new at that time. It replaced the old wooden school. But these are the days when there was no signage, there were no crosswalks, and this young boy was how many of you knew Rosamond Gilmartin? Ah, you're all too young. Rosamond was the postmistress in Pride's Crossing for quite a few years in the later period. And she was around when my kids were younger. She was quite a formidable woman. But this young boy who died was her brother. But she had not heard, and her mother must have been pregnant with Rosamond at the time the son was killed. I don't know if there were other boys in the family. Sorry, I thought I had another. The person, I'm not very good at this. The driver of the car was an 18-year-old summer resident from Beverly Cove. His last name was Amory, Charles Amory. He was driving the family car with a friend of his and the chauffeur, but young Amory was driving the car. So it makes you think that maybe he was just learning to drive. In the newspaper write-up, it said he was driving at a good clip. So how fast was he driving? He saw the boy and tried to swerve to avoid him and didn't, and killed him. And I think it stayed with this man his whole life because he had problems later on. His father, they immediately went to the police station, did everything they could, but the boy died. Rosamond remembered being told that Mrs. Amory gave her mother a layette of clothes for Rosamond when she was born. And Rosamond's sister told me that she thought that the Amorys paid off the family's mortgage. So I looked up the deeds, and the mortgage was indeed paid off within 10 days of that accident. So that's probably true. But it was a real pall on the neighborhood. But so on to more cheery things. All of a sudden, how do you think gasoline was sold in the beginning? Anybody know? Okay, I'll tell you. But you'll have to wait a minute. Retailers adapted to the automobile trade. So Cuthbert, who had made harnesses, riding saddles, and horse furnishings, all of a sudden also automobile supplies and repairing. So he's a man who's been working with harness and all that stuff his whole life, and all of a sudden he's carrying automobiles things. Charles Martin was a bicycle company, and all of a sudden they're selling cars as well as bicycles. Again, and it says, this one says the most. This is Dix's garage, and Dix had one of the first real gas stations, but not at this time. But repairing, vulcanizing, battery recharging, cars rented with reliable chauffeurs, pretty good. Central Square garage was Trout and Murray. Trout had earlier owned a big stable on High Street, and which is now 2 houses, but that's another story. And all of a sudden, he's opening a garage. Full line of tires, greases, oils, and accessories carried in stock. Cars for hire by day, a week, or month with competent drivers. So where are they buying gasoline? They are buying, go back. The supplies that they say, auto supplies, included gasoline, but it was sold in, I imagine, 5-gallon jugs or tins. So there was no pumping stations at all. And I'm not the first pumping station was in North Beverly, the first one in Beverly, and I can't remember which was the first, if I ever found out which was the first in the farms. After the arrival of the automobile, Sawyer, for whom Sawyer Road is named, orchestrated the buildings of over 30 automobile-free carriage roads throughout the North Shore. Pole Swamp Lane is one of them, as well as other roads that go through Chabaco Lake and that area. It was like now wanting to keep dirt bikes out of the roads. Pole Swamp Lane was completed in 1908.
Which one is Pole Swamp, Nancy?
Pole Swamp, if you go, it runs from Preston Place to Hemlock, or not Hemlock, but Juniper. It's way in the back. It goes to Juniper. Yeah.
It doesn't go through.
It did.
Yeah, it did.
I can't remember the name of the property, but there was a right-of-way from Valley Street. Is it Valley? Oh, who was the guy who lived out?
Ben?
Pardon? Ben.
Yeah, Ben Williams.
Ben Williams. The perimeter of his house toward the pond was Pole Swamp.
Between his house and my house.
Pardon me?
Between his house and my house.
Oh, yeah, yes. And but that was a public, not a public right-of-way, but a right-of-way for horse-drawn things. and walking. All right, let's get to the chauffeurs. This guy is so classy. This is George Dupre, and I love him lined up with, I think that little one is an electric,
Yeah.
isn't it?
No, I think carriage.
And the bicycle. And here he is down below. Yeah, so they were paid well. The guy who washed the cars was paid twice as much as his wife's lady's maid. And this is the only house that's left that you can see of the Frick property on the ocean side. This is the car house, and it's you can see, do you all know which one it is? You can see it through the woods, and I wish I could read this better. So, in addition to the car house, this is the battery room, and this provided some power for the house. Here's the repair room. This is the car room. This is the washroom. And this says, this is engine. I think all of this part is not cars. It's the providing power to the house. And then upstairs, this is, so the kitchen, the pantry, I'm not sure what that is, dining room, chamber. So I don't know if a husband and wife lived here, but this was all of his chauffeurs. And here you can see Frick in the car, and notice where the steering wheel is in front of the chauffeur. So it's an English style. So here is Mr. Dupree on an outing with the family at the beach, eyeing a pretty girl. And these are, this is all from the Frick archive. So this is a cleaning bill. 2 chauffeurs' suits, something, cleaned and pressed and repaired. Chauffeur's suit, something after. Can anybody read that? I don't know. Cleaned plus repaired. Frick was very careful with his money, so if it looked like a lot, oh, here he's bought a lot of stuff from Culbert, who's now selling automobile and stable supplies. Steel, what do you think these are? 3 dozen steel balls.
Bearings? Yeah, they use bearings.
Bearings, ball bearings, huh?
Makes sense. Yeah, they probably had to redo bearings and stuff like that.
Okay. I still don't see gasoline. 5 gallons of kerosene oil. This is, did any of you know Cecily Pollard? No, except you. I love Ernest Pollard. He came from England to be chauffeur to the Moores, and he and Mrs. Moore became great friends. In the winter, the Pollards lived in Manhattan. This was Judge Moore's house, which is now the, is now the Italian embassy, I think. And this was where the, over here, there was the garage. I don't know why this cross is here. And this is where the Pollards lived, and the cars were. And they used to go to the opera, and he would drive them to the opera. And he would know when, he would listen to the opera on the radio. And when it got to the final act, he drove over and picked them up and brought them back to their house. So this is the Moore's house. This is where the Pollards live. You all know this house. Upper people lived here. Not this. It wasn't the guard, the lowly workmen. The Pollards had this apartment and would be here just in the summer. And here they are at Rock March. And yeah, the chauffeur really had to be a mechanic because it was all so new. So if you had a really classy car, you needed a chauffeur who knew what they were doing. So here's Mr. Pollard. And here's Mr. Pollard with Ada Small Moore in her old age. She outlived her husband by quite a bit. And I love this. They write letters back and forth. She is in India, I think. Yeah. I was very glad to get your letter in Bombay and hear all the news. This is Mrs. Moore to her chauffeur. Our journey is more than half over and has been a very wonderful one. We've been in parts of India almost never visited by Americans and rarely by the British. And instead of finding everything very primitive, we found greater luxury than anywhere else in India. The native rulers are well educated, most of them having been to England. And as they have great wealth, they surround themselves with every comfort. As they have no hotels for foreigners, we are state guests, and in most cases are entertained by the rulers themselves. In this past week, I have had the use of a Rolls-Royce car. In fact, here, which is the most out-of-the-way place we have visited, the Maharaja has a Rolls. It's nickel-plated and lined with cream-colored satin and is very gorgeous and comfortable. 2 weeks from today, we'll be flying in Persia. We're looking forward to it and of meeting often those who have flown there and are enthusiastic about it. But that's just, finding things that he'd be interested in to write to him about. And then over here, dear Ernest, I've had a nice little chat with Mrs. Pollard yesterday, and she gave me the news that you had your preliminary operation and that everything is going nicely. An hour or two later, I talked with Dr. Childs, et cetera, et cetera. So she's very caring about this man and his family. Anybody know Tom Rizaldi? Ah. Tom Rizaldi was Beverly. This is an earlier Tom Rizaldi than you knew, Gail, probably. Was the first Italian chauffeur, and he worked for the Bayard Warren family. Here he is at the beach. It looks like he's babysitting here. Yeah. Okay, Elio's chauffeur was Tom Green. And Elio, as I said, she was known as a pedestrianist. And she walked to Newport with Mr. Green behind her with sandwiches. Elio was very much disliked by many of the people in Beverly Farms. But the people who worked for her, she was very good to. She wasn't a bad employer. She was famous for her Lincoln convertible. And this convertible is now in, I think, no, this is from somebody's collection. One of her cars is in the Automobile Museum in Maine. This is, yeah, custom built for the renowned tennis champion, sportswoman, and heiress, Eleanor Randolph Sears. Janie Fanning told me the story about her mother, Mr. Fanning had a truck, and Mrs. Fanning didn't have a driver's license, but she sometimes drove the truck around town, not out of Beverly Farms. Well, she hit Elio's car. Elio wasn't in it. The chauffeur was in it. And I don't think she hurt the car very badly. And Mr. Green got out, and I said to Ann Fanning, I don't think Miss Sears needs to know about this, do you? So Mr. Pollard was the best paid. But if you compare with the chief of police, he was making more than the chief of police. And Nicholas Lawler, the Beverly Farms garbage collector, made more than, made the same amount as the chief of police.
So Maurice Mary, was that Renee Mary's father? They lived at 184 Hart Street.
No. Mary, yeah, her father was a chauffeur. I'm sorry, I was not registering. Yes, That's Renee's father.
Renee's father.
Yeah,
I remember him.
do you?
And Mrs. Mary, because I grew up at 185 Hart.
Yeah,
Across the
yeah.
street, and we went to visit them. They were from France.
Yes,
She
yes.
was a great cook. She was a cook for, I don't know who lived in the house then when I was a child, but that whole plot of land and everything that's for sale now. on
Oh,
Hart
yeah,
Street.
yeah. Right, this isn't a car story, but Renee told the story that she and her mother used to walk way down by Elio's house, and Elio was notorious. She had a house on the beach, for those of you who don't know, at the end of West Beach. And she blocked what had been a traditional path for people for that area to walk through her property. She registered it in the Registry of Deeds that they were not permitted to walk there. And she was parodied in one of the parades, but she would have somebody with a gun if people walked on her beach. And Renee said her mother used to walk in the water with her, down through the water, and she said, and my mother would say, "You do not own the ocean." But Elio was a piece of work. Okay. There really was a lot of closeness between the owners of places and their chauffeurs. The chauffeurs were the people who were with them often by themselves and were pretty well trusted by the owners. Gurdon Davis told the story that his father worked for a family, and there were thefts. Yeah, there were thefts at the house, and the chauffeur told the owner that it was Mr. Davis. And Mr. Davis was fired. Turned out it was the chauffeur himself. It wasn't, so that was a sad story. But then he tried to hire him back, and Mr. Davis said, "Nuh-uh." There were perils of being a chauffeur. In this one, the chauffeur gets caught for speeding and has to pay. In this one, this is Edgewater House, the Horvitz's house now. And if you read the book I wrote about Edgewater House, you'll know about the heist of liquor from his basement. And in here, the chauffeur pleaded not guilty when arraigned before the federal judges, but he ended up being, I can't remember if he went to jail for it. No, they were held in $500 each. I know something happened, and the gardener who was accused quit, and I'm not sure about what happened with the chauffeur. Those of you who saw Downton Abbey will remember the daughter falling in love with the chauffeur. Well, there was a daughter who fell in love with the chauffeur in Beverly Farms. And if you don't know all the other people, you're not going to know this one. Maybe you'll remember. Does anybody remember Maddie Post? Maddie lived in an estate, the estate where the McDonoughs lived most recently. I don't know who lives there now, on Valley Street. It's, the entrance now is maybe on Valley, but it was from Hale. And the family had, I guess, an attractive young chauffeur, and he and Maddie apparently had a romance. The father found out and fired the chauffeur. And Maddie never married, and I don't know how she got it, but she moved into what had been the chauffeur's house. And she lived there the rest of her life. So, That was her romantic story, sad story. Okay, a lot of chauffeurs were given a lot by by the way, I forgot to look this up. Domestic servants weren't on Social Security and until the 1950s. And I'm not sure about chauffeurs, but some chauffeurs did pretty well. Cinnamon, who was the chauffeur to Augustus Loring, was allowed to live in this house long after his retirement. Mrs. Moore bought the land for this house. You may be familiar with the house, sort of opposite the end of it, Haskell Street on Hale. And Elio Sears left her chauffeur her row house on Byron Street in Boston. So they did okay. The Hunt sisters, who were the last owners of Lynch Park before it was bought by Lynch for the city, bought this house for their chauffeur, William Hills. Then not only that, they buried him on the family plot in Forest Hill Cemetery. So one of the family. Okay, that's it. So.
Fantastic.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah.
I have a chauffeur story for you.
Yeah.
We live in a gatekeeper's cottage, and the house up on the hill was a summer home,
Yeah.
and a family lived on Beacon Hill. And the gatekeeper that lived in our house in the 20s and 30s would take the eggs from the chickens
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and
to
bring
Boston.
them down to the train station.
Ah.
And that would bring them to Boston. And the chauffeur would pick them up and bring them to the family on Beacon Hill so they would have fresh eggs.
I believe it. Yeah. Yeah. That I've heard stories like that about other people. The one story that I didn't have time to put. I just learned it, but it didn't have time to put it together. A chauffeur. Do you all know the house, Villa Del Mar, that's falling apart at the end of, by the railroad tracks? The beautiful house. That was the house of George Lee, who was an artist who had it built for his. He was the son of one of the first summer people in Beverly Farms, and George had that house built for his Italian-born wife. And it was a beautiful house. And there's a, below that house, which is falling apart, is the old, I don't think it was really a carriage house, but it was the garage and the chauffeur's house. Anyway, the man who was George Lee's, first I think he was a coach driver, and then he was a chauffeur. He was Irish, and I forget his name, which doesn't matter. He worked for Lee and managed to, with the money he earned, and I think probably with a mortgage from Lee, he bought a lot of land on the corner of what was then next to the vacant corner on Hart and Haskell, and built the three-family house that some of you may have known. I think that one of the DePaulos lived there. Anyway, I forgot, that might be wrong on that. But anyway, he built a three-family house. He never lived there. He always lived in the carriage house, in the chauffeur's house at the Lee Mansion. So he had enough money and enough help from Lee to build an income property for himself. And so he did pretty well. All right. Well, thanks again. Yeah, Gail.
I don't know if you remember, but Myopia Hunt Club used to have a horse show on Labor Day weekend,
Yeah.
and I can remember Elio Sears. And knowing the kind of person she was, I can't imagine this, but I think she was riding side saddle. And I had never seen anyone else ride side saddle.
Well, she was doing it for the hell of it because she rode astride
Yes, I'm sure she
at some event when she was 18, I think. It shocked everybody. Yeah, if you haven't read it, the book that's called Pride's Crossing, this is a biography of Elio, written by the daughter of somebody who managed her horses in somewhere else, North Carolina maybe.
It cost $99 to get it at the bookstore.
The book?
But it is available through Bev
So
Farms
I'm
Library.
reading it right now. And I got it in the library and
Yeah.
I wanted to buy it. And
Oh, wow.
she said for $99 you can buy it. So I got a friend who went online and I'm getting a secondhand copy.
Yeah. Well, I have one. I have one. But anyway, anybody else? Yeah.
I was just going to mention that in researching our house, there was a coachman for Gordon Dexter who owned the Siemens house.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
so their coachman lived in our house with his family, I think it was about 40 years, from
Uh-huh.
1890 to 19.
What was his name?
John Bolam, and he was born in England,
Uh-huh.
and
I think I wanted to look up Frick's chauffeur because I think he was probably, no, but that was his chauffeur was born in France, but forget what I said. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to research your house, and there are lots of tips. And Jay Leahy, many of you know Jay Leahy. He has done a fabulous job of researching houses, and I don't know how, I'm not sure how you access it, but it's available for people to look at. So, anyway, thanks for coming. Thank you. And it happened after 4 tries.